Okay, everyone, welcome to Princess Hope's School of Media Analysis. Let's get started with some classroom rules. Rule number one, I am to be addressed as Princess. If you're asking me a question, you say Princess, how do, how, etc. Princess, etc., etc. Teehees. Uh, Number two, I will ask each of you to speak when I'm ready for you. Don't talk over each other. Stay muted until you get addressed to unmute, okay? Number three, when we're watching the movie for the first time, everyone stay muted, okay? And then number four, we'll be taking notes on our second watch of the movie, so we'll be pausing and we'll be able to make jokes during the movie or talk about things during the movie. It's mostly etc. etc. The first time is for the serious watching. The second time is for the watching for the class. Number five is to engage with the lessons and try your best. Don't just sit here muted and never engage, never ask questions. That's not what we want. We want you to pay attention and try. But number six, most importantly, have fun. If you ever feel like I'm making you miserable or don't be mean to each other about things, you know? The goal here is to make sure that people is to have fun. I want to talk with media that I like and eventually media that you guys like with you guys. And the best way to do that I found is doing this kind of thing where I prep questions and have a sort of topic and stuff. Do you have any questions about the class rules?
Okay, so first question I have is what sort of notes should I write down? Will it be about the story, the characters, or both?
So when we're doing the notes watch through, I'll be providing lists of questions. You're gonna be writing down notes that will pertain to those questions. On our third meeting, which will be after the second watch, I'll be going through everyone and asking the questions to them, and I want them to have a good at least 2-sentence response to each question. The notes is anything that would pertain to the movie that you would want to comment on.
Oh, I see. So essentially, it's not anything too narrow. It's quizzical.
Yeah, it's not necessarily. It'll make sense when it happens.
Sure. My question is with the notes. Do they have? Is there a particular format? Does it need to be digital, physical? What?
It can be any way that you can refer back to it, as long as it's written down and you can look at it again.
All right, I'll write it in cuneiform on clay tablets.
Okay. What is media analysis? Media analysis. I tried my best to come up with a definition that was all-encompassing, because generally speaking, there is so many different types of media. There's movies, anime, pictures, memes even, and so I tried to come up with a concrete definition that fit everything. And the one I came up with was media analysis is the act of thinking about media that you consume. While many people will have different approaches to media analysis that emphasize different ways of thinking about media, they all require you to attempt to understand the media that you're attempting to analyze. You're trying to think about things is kind of the point. Any questions about this?
So how much artistic intent are we reading into it, or are we going to treat it as full death of the author, only the text?
That will be explained later. Why is media analysis an important skill? What are we doing here? Number one, you're not immune to propaganda. Political messaging exists in almost all forms of media to some degree. If you disagree with that, then you likely need this course more than anyone. Just because you don't notice them doesn't mean they aren't there. To what degree they were also intentional is also, to certain extents. Understanding the political messages of media that you enjoy and how to decipher them is helpful so that you can stay aware when consuming media that is impactful to you. Media can change people's feelings about subjects. For example, A Silent Voice is a movie that I watched as a kid about how bad people can work towards redemption, I guess is a good way of putting it. And that will forever be a part of me, and I will not any worldview that doesn't have a place for redemption is a failed worldview, under my opinion, because of that. And also, we're not isolated here. Deer shootings went down after Bambi came out. And same thing with Jaws. People hunting sharks went up, and seeing sharks as like big scary villains went up after Jaws. Media is impactful to people and is essentially propaganda. You can essentially be tricked into believing things that you wouldn't otherwise believe. Now, notably, I do not think that if a person enjoys a piece of media, it necessarily means that they agree with all of the political messages that are in that media. For example, I like Toradora, even though it features like a woman beating up a guy constantly. I'm not a misandrist. Hopefully not. you know. And now that's going to be a subject that we're going to talk more about on a future lesson. That's going to be more of a topic that we're going to talk about in a future lesson. I don't assume anyone has any questions about this. I think I was pretty, straightforward. If you are in any way desiring to make any form of art, it's helpful to understand what makes art in that medium work. Analyzing art can help you understand why that art that you like works, so that when you go on to make your own in a similar field, it can be better. This course is mostly going to focus on writing because it's the medium that I understand the best, but it will touch on other stuff occasionally. Even things like fan fiction, for example, will benefit from understanding the characters to a degree. So, number 3. Media that we love can say something about us, and understanding that can help us understand ourselves and each other better. I loved Pokemon for most of my childhood, and even to this day, I love Pokemon. Pokemon the first movie is one of the first exposures I've had to the franchise. Thinking about what is in that movie and why it was so appealing to me can help me figure out what kid me felt and what that says about me. Well, it's tempting to say it's not always that deep. Not everything that you like is gonna say something about you. I find that if you really know yourself and you really understand what to look for in psychology and stuff, there's at least something there. Any questions? Oh, Emma Dracos, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Okay. So I have a question when it comes to the importance of media analysis. This pertains to, do you think it is more important for what we observe at a younger age or an older age? Do you think this is something that people should acquire as soon as they can?
I think it's a valuable skill to acquire, whenever possible, and it's something that you're always improving as you go on through life.
Okay, because I hear a lot of times where people say it's just for kids, and I've always felt a niggle about that, where that feels wrong to say almost.
Yeah.
The importance of a media being oh, it's just for children, so it has no importance. I feel like children should have important media, right?
Oh, you're talking about oh no, it's just for kids is absolutely no excuse to not think about and have good media. If anything, I would say that having things there are things that I would say for kids that is the case. In a future slide, I'll talk about that. But generally speaking, both media analysis is an important skill to have when you're young, and yes, media analysis is an important skill to have, in general. Just initial impressions, I do not think I'll necessarily agree with some of the things said here as being universally applicable. I think that some people are more susceptible to framing of narrative than others. If one person is already certain in their beliefs, then it can be difficult to be. Absolutely. And that's what it is about, being aware, right? And having strong conviction in their beliefs. I do agree that at the end of no piece of media could ever convince me that gay rights are wrong. It's just stuff most people are certain about their beliefs, but it's also important to Hey, real quick. Uh, I didn't get to finish my point that I was saying because I got distracted. Um, but my point that I was trying to make was that even if you feel that you are certain of your beliefs, it's important to understand what the political messages that the media is pushing, regardless, so that you can be aware and you can consciously say no. Because sometimes you something can be subtle enough that you just don't notice it. You know, in that regard.
Yes, yes, yes. So, big example of this, I think. I was rewatching Naruto the first time last year, and it was a show that I watched religiously as a kid. And it really struck me rewatching it how much it kind of shaped my sort of attitude and sort of view on things. A very constant theme in it is never giving up on your friends. The first lesson Naruto learns is people who shinobi who abandon their friends are worse than scum, and that theme kind of builds over and over. And just a lot of the themes are something that can really stick with a person, especially if they were young as I was watching, and if they're the right kind of person who that message is going to resonate with.
That's a good example. And I can see that. Okay. So what is a media analysis framework? So a media analysis framework is a person's approach to media analysis. Art is subjective. People will find different things about a work more or less appealing. Some people will care a lot about artist intent, and some people will care very little about artist intent. Some people will care more about political messaging, and other people will feel that it affects them very little. People who are more familiar to media analysis here possibly have their own framework, their own approach. Ness, an example, is one of them. She values media. She values artist intent very highly. And I'm aware that it's going to be very different. It's going to be very difficult to step outside of their own framework to try to understand, accept, and use mine. But I think it's a good one, and I think when put into use, I think it will help. It's worthy to incorporate some part of it into your own. If nothing else, give it a try. Oh, Emma Dracos, feel free to unmute.
So, a bit of a question. I'm under the impression that art is in two parts, objective and subjective, from what I know, where we should always consider the subjectivity of the reception of the art and the objectivity of what an author intended.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with that.
I feel like trying to say that it's 100% subjective or 100% objective kind of misses a bit on what can affect art and how we might be affected by art. Because of course we've always had interpretive, especially interpretive trans icons that exist. And sometimes we've had times where we wished to have another thing be reclaimed, but the objective meaning behind it prevented that, essentially.
I agree with you. I felt I was a little bit overgeneralizing in this one, in this thing when I said it.
Thank you.
When I was rewriting it. But yeah, when I say art is subjective, I mean its reception is. The way that we view art is, not necessarily, objective. But there will always be something that the artist intended, and how much that matters to you is different for everyone. Me personally, I value artist intent very little, unless I am judging the artist specifically. The artist intent only matters if I'm thinking about the artist, is a good way of putting it. So, what is Princess Hope's framework? What is the framework I'll be teaching here, and what I'll be exploring here? Media analysis is about self-discovery and enjoyment. I do not view media as objective. We already talked about the asterisk to that. Different people can watch the same movie and take completely different perspectives on that media. So long as they thought about it and it feels true to them, then that's a correct form of media analysis. You can analyze anything you want to. A movie, a single episode of a show, a multi-book long series, or even a single frame of animation. So long as you are enjoying the process, discovering things about yourself or the work in relation to yourself, then that is a correct application of Princess Hope's media framework. The 10-point scale. what you would rate a piece of media out of 10 is a very common question that people might ask. But oftentimes, they rarely make use of the full 10 points on the 10-point scale. The average person will just use yes or no, I liked it or I didn't like it, which is a 1 or a 10. And then some people who pretend to be smart will say, oh, well, this is a 7. You know? Because they're trying to acknowledge it's not perfect, but they say they like it, but that doesn't really mean anything. Here at Princess Hope's School of Media Analysis, I'm going to teach you how to use a 10-point scale properly. 5 is average. It's average. Very middle of the road. It doesn't do anything amazing, but it also doesn't do anything horribly. For every good thing it does, there's a bad thing that to go along with it. And it just leans towards the middle. 4 and 6. 4 is slightly below average. It's mostly average, but it's leaning towards bad. There's more bad than good. And then 6 is slightly above average. It's average, but it's good. But it's average, but it's going towards good. You know? Very slight. Not a lot of 4s and 6s. Now 3, 2s, and 1s. A 3 is where we start getting to like really bad things. The number of things that it does bad strongly outweighs the good. A 2 is terrible, but not outright offensive. Very poor quality. A 1 is outright offensive. It is revolting to you. It is actually terrible. Like, it is the worst thing you have seen. A 7 is when we start... 7, 8, 9, and 10. A 7 is where we start getting into the good category. Like, this is definitely a good piece of media. It's good, but it's not amazing. There's a lot of things that they could have done better, and, like, that's, like, stuff that is immediately obvious to you. An 8 is a really good, strong story. It had an emotional impact during its runtime, but it's not something that's going to, like, stick with you for the rest of your life or anything. It's nothing to lose sleep over. A 9 is close to a masterpiece, but it's missing that one little thing. Maybe there's, like, 1 or 2 lines that you feel are politically problematic. Maybe there's, like, 1 or 2, like, episodes that are, like, not the greatest of a whole. But overall, it's a really important, like, piece of media to you, and you think about it often. Like, it genuinely, like, really big. A 10 is something that struck a chord with you emotionally. The work changed your outlook on something, on life, you know? And to me, a 10 has to make you cry. If it didn't make you cry, it's not a 10. But that's my personal thing. Do you have any questions about the 10 points?
Okay, I think a lot of the sort of people don't use the bottom half of the scale partially comes from the fact that if people think they're not going to like something, they just won't watch it. So they don't really have a catalog of things that from the sort of 1 to 5 range. So they're sort of like, because they have, you know, avoidance towards something they don't think they're going to like, or scares them off in the first few episodes to the point they don't watch enough to rank it. It's like, I think it's part of the reason. There's a sort of bias to things people think they will like.
That's fair, but I feel like that only works if, like, you're really early into things. Like, generally speaking, if you've watched more than, like, 80 pieces of media, at least for me, example, I've seen like 80 like different anime at least. Like, there's
most people have not seen that much.
There's things that I have, like, at the end of the day, within that, like, all of those things, there's things that are definitely, like, closer to like that. Now, whether or not you completed it is another thing. I don't think you need to have completed a show to have a personal rating for it. Going in order, you can mute yourself, Friendly, and it is Madraco's turn.
Alright, so I think 10-point scale is quite literally metric, so it's good to actually define what it means rather than just throwing each other to wolves when it comes to understanding what each other's opinions and metrics are. But a grievance I had, not with the 10-point scale specifically, but 2 examples you have on it that are present on this slide.
Okay.
Number 7 is a good description, so is 9. However, number 8 is that maybe defining a piece of media at 8 based on story might be a bit narrow, considering some pieces of media are not traditional stories containing characters, but are like lightning in a bottle media. Some things are evocative without being a story, and they can reach an 8.
Yes, this is a flaw from what I mentioned earlier, that the course will be mostly focused on the framework of analyzing a story. You can delete the word story from this like slide, and it should still make sense.
Yeah, that's something I would like to point out.
Yep,
And I know you already said that this is just your opinion, but I would like to point out that sometimes it's not that this media doesn't make this person cry, it's that this person doesn't cry when they experience a 10.
Oh yeah, I
Some
agree.
people
There are definitely some
crying-
10s even
yeah.
that I haven't cried to, but to me, if I cry to something, it makes it a 10.
Yeah, I understand that. But you made the statement that if this didn't make you cry, it's not a 10, is a bit narrow in description. It's not on the slide, but it's how you described it. Because crying is just one of many expressions of extreme emotion that some people don't have.
That's true.
That's all. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for correcting me and pointing that out. Now I told you how to, like, what the numbers are and, like, what they should mean to you. Now we're going to discuss what we're using the... what we're going to be using the numbers for. So what is the framework? The thesis. So we're going to go into the different things that go onto my framework. Number 1, the thesis. The thesis is the main message, the moral of the story, as it were. A good, so I wrote this wrong, but most pieces of media don't directly spell out what the thesis is. I think media for kids has more like leeway to do that because it's for kids, and like they need it more. And I also think sometimes spelling out the thesis more bluntly can be a good character moment. And instead you have to derive the thesis from the characters' dialogue and plot events. Any questions on the thesis? Okay. So putting into practice what I said before, that anything can be analyzed, I'm going to show you a clip from an anime. It's just like 10 seconds. So it's not going to be like a perfect analysis, but it's a 10 seconds clip from an anime.
There you go.
Jeez, you're strong, Haruki. Thank you.
That's the only redeeming quality I've got. I'll grab that one too.
If we're just analyzing this clip and we're ignoring everything else in the movie, in the series, should say, then the thesis is that helping people is good. That's the first one that comes to my mind. It's a scene that shows a girl struggling to carry something, and then someone helps her. That would be the thesis of this one clip. So, how to evaluate the thesis? Well, number 1, what is the thesis? Figuring out what the thesis is probably the most important thing to figure out how to evaluate it. Number 2, are there multiple possible interpretations? Number 3, how unique is the thesis? Like, is the thesis something you've seen 100 times before, or is it just like, or is it like genuinely interesting and unique? Sometimes how well does a series, how well does it explore that thesis? Sometimes a thesis isn't unique, but the way that they explore the thesis is. Like, they explore it in such a depth that it becomes, like, good. An example of this is at Hazbin Hotel. The thesis of Hazbin Hotel, at least as far as, like I think it is anyone can be redeemed. This is not necessarily a unique thesis. It's pretty popular, like, thing. But it explores it with characters that are genuinely complex and have problems in ways that isn't typically that isn't necessarily typical, and I think good quality. Hello.
I have a disagreement of what's the most important in that scene for the thesis, actually.
Oh. That's interesting. See, class, this is where I said multiple possible interpretations.
You know how you said that the most important takeaway is helping people is good. I feel like the most important takeaway isn't a broader moral narrative about what they're doing, and I think the most important part of that scene, even outside of context within the series, is how when in response to being praised for helping, it's like, wow, you're so strong. This character's inherent response was, thanks, it's the only redeeming quality I have. Instantly self-deprecating themselves in response. And I think that's very important to pay attention to.
I agree. We're actually about to discuss that in the very next slide.
I think that's the thesis here.
Interesting. That's great. Good job. Guess what? You just did media analysis. Everyone clap. Okay, Riley Rose, you had a question?
That was basically the same thing that Emma's saying, but I was kind of focusing on the angle of if we wanted to have a sort of broad moral sense of also assuming this is just the single clip that exists and the entire thing is people take pride in their abilities.
Yeah, that's also a thesis. Good job. You also did media analysis. Everyone, good job.
Ow. Okay.
Okay, get yourself around on the next slide. Themes. So, what are themes? Themes are very similar to the thesis, to the point where you could say if you don't think something is the thesis, but it's there, you could say it's a theme. They're topics that are discussed in the work that may lend themselves to the thesis, but aren't necessarily the thesis. This framework is sort of under the idea that you believe that there's the one thesis and then the rest are themes. Like, the one most important thing is that, but that I don't think that's necessarily 100% correct all the time. So for example, in the previous clip, I would say self-esteem is a theme. It was brought up briefly, but, you know, it wasn't really, like, there wasn't more to it. Think of themes kind of like a flavor. They add texture to a story and make a world more believable. What's a thesis and what is a theme is a highly subjective thing. So how do you evaluate themes? Number one, how interesting were the themes presented to you? Number two, how much work is done by the work itself to discuss the themes? So I brought two examples to this. The Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's manga, it's card games on motorcycles. They're riding vehicles, and I can be like, oh, well, there's even a chapter where the vehicle breaks down. This is clearly like there's a clearly like theme about vehicles and stuff, and I can go on to say like, well, there's a part where like the chip breaks down, and they're clearly like this is clearly a critique on capitalism and stuff like that. But like, how much of that is you doing that work, and how much of that is the work itself? In that case, not at all. Like, most of it is you. That's not to say that that doesn't have value, but that's not the work itself. But in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, for example, they repeatedly bring up like the value of life. It's explored pretty thoroughly about how like valuable a life is, and it's not a soul is not a replaceable like thing. Like I would say that is like a very like a good theme. And then number three is how well do themes contribute to the thesis? So me and Kat watched a movie called The Truman Show, which we're probably going to watch during the class at some point because it's a really fucking good movie. And the movie is sort of about this idea of like someone's life being streamed.
You're gonna
like,
spoil the whole thing.
It's not like the worst. Like knowing that spoiler doesn't like ruin it. I don't think.
I don't know.
I guess. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to put it. The theme. There was also like a brief like theme about product placement in the thing. Right? And so that that theme contributes to the thesis overall.
The theme of the product placement contributes to the thesis because it contributes to the fact that the world is fake. It constantly is about like, look at this. Everything on the show is for sale. The show is a way to market itself and to market other things, and all shows have product placement. It's that thing you don't notice in real life because it's just there, but once they start talking about it, once you start seeing it everywhere, it's like, and it starts to hate you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't notice the ad on the side of a billboard, but you notice it when feels like it's when you notice it when it's in a show for some reason.
Hey, Kat. I'm thankful that you added that, but remember that you have to raise your hand. The next up is characters. Well, characters are characters. They're personified beings that usually speak some form of dialogue, usually, and are the tools that the story uses to explore its thesis and themes. Again, this is me being as generic as possible to be as applicable as possible. So, how do you evaluate characters? How well does a character's actions and story and like thoughts contribute to the thesis? How relatable are they? Which is subjective as all fuck. Like, I relate to fucking Taiga from Toradora. How fun are they to watch? A good example of like a really fun character to watch is Scar from The Lion King. Single-handedly makes that movie like a 6 or a 7. Like, it's a really good 6, 7. Really good. And then how interesting or unique are the characters? Now, next up is dialogue. Dialogue is the spoken words that characters say, but can also be other text such as thoughts of narration. How do you evaluate dialogue? How natural do characters speak? Do they make you feel like it's a believable world? And then, are there any lines that like really stand out to you? Sometimes a line can stick with you. The Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds manga is something from my childhood, but it's not like amazing. But this line, if all you do is increase your speed like a maniac, as long as you live, you'll never beat Jack Atlas. That line will forever be stuck in my head, and like I like live by this shit. The idea of like, if all you do is bash your head against a wall, go super fast, like punch, go like, you know, you're never gonna succeed. You need to let yourself have a break. You need to take care of yourself. That line will always be with me, because it's a really good line. Anything to say about dialogue?
Okay, so based on how natural the characters speak,
Yes.
I primarily agree with that. However, I do not think it's a criterion, because I do think there's a lot you can do thematically with just having a world where people speak weird.
Absolutely.
This is my, like, not saying you said it's a 100% rule, but I think, Riley, this is going to be a reference for us, but I do think JoJo sets up a very good, like, thematic setting where people just kind of talk like freaks. But especially, I really like that shot where in part 7, where it's, like, the manifestation of Jesus speaking in Johnny's ear about if your heart wavers, do not, like, what is it? Do not shoot until you feel your heart stop wavering or something like that. Which is like, no one speaks like that, and it's a weird thing to say, but it's set in a world where, like, thematically there's importance to people talking like weird Shakespearean freaks sometimes.
Well, that is naturalistic dialogue. When I say natural dialogue, I don't necessarily mean it natural to how a 2020 person would speak. It's natural to how the world is, and like how natural that comes off, you know?
Like consistent.
Yes, consistent is a good way.
Yes.
It's a better way of putting it.
Yes, thank you. I got flustered and didn't say my question very well.
It's all right. Good job, Eli.
Thank you.
Okay, what is politics? What political messages does the work contain, either consciously or unconsciously? Knowing this might take a while to grasp because it takes understanding the politics of now and of the time. For example, Star Wars, right? The episodes 1, 2, and 3 are like based on politics, right? It's based on the idea of like, and it has like political based like things that are representative of political takes that would be in our world, you know? And the same is like, and even like episodes like 4, 5, and 6, they're literally like a rebel group uprising against a fascist regime, you know? How to evaluate politics. What political themes or ideas or beliefs are expressed that are... bleh. What political themes or beliefs are expressed or are present in the media? Number 2 is how are they treated in the media? What beliefs are condemned or made fun of, and what beliefs are treated as normal or heroic? you'll definitely like see times where like if it's one character that isn't necessarily indicative of the beliefs that the story would necessarily has, but if it's every character having the same sort of belief of like this, or like generally just the way that the show, the framing, etc., that may be an indicator of how the series itself, like the work itself, views politics. Number 3 is how in depth is that political belief or theme explored? Like, how much of it is you? Like, how much of it is you pointing at, like, they had bread, so obviously this is about capitalism because bread is a symptom of capitalism or whatever the shit. Or it necessarily being an entirely focused thing where, like, in The Good Place, they talk about, like, capitalism a lot as like a thing, but I'm not going to, like, spoil it because it's important. 4. By the end of the media, how do you feel about the political ideas that were explored? Like, which is why I talked about earlier, where like, no show is going to make me think anything like about that gay rights are wrong, you know. But if a show ends up having a character like that ends up saying something like that, I'm likely not going to like that show, you know. Does anyone have anything to say about politics?
Let's see, I think when it comes to the depth of politics, would you say that the strength of a political message being stronger or lesser would make it more digestible to a larger audience?
It depends on how much is it in the text itself, right? I think if anything, like what the depth.
Not censorship. I mean, like from the original creation of a media, like the objectivity of it, the author. What do you think is a good balance of digestible, or how much do you think is it important that a piece of media might unsettle someone into questioning themselves?
Can you rephrase that? I'm confused.
Essentially, politics are good to get messages across, but sometimes when a political message is heavy-handed, someone might recoil.
Oh,
Do you think that the intensity of politics might make it more difficult to evaluate? Or do you think that something being more intense and unsettling makes it easier to evaluate? Because I've seen it go both ways when it comes to media.
It generally just depends on what you about it. It just depends. Both. Sorry.
That's a good response. Thank you. You don't have to apologize.
Yep. Riley has a question.
I think a very good example is sometimes when there is a plot thread that's meant to sort of mirror politics, but in a very clumsy way that can reveal some of the like gaps in the author's knowledge, or like one example I have is the animal human racism plot line in Ruby.
Oh,
in
yeah.
which the fantasy animal person racism plot lines can very easily get the weeds mixed in with just sort of clear, like, oh, it's. I know Eli has an example with My Hero where like there's a plot line where like, but it's kind of like brought up suddenly, and we never really see the effects on this on a broader society, and the kind of stuff isn't really resolved beyond, hey, let's work together for the common goal right now, but not really sort of addressing it meaningfully. And especially in Ruby's case, where the villains are in that whole animal person racism are the people trying to advance their own protection. It's a bit of, but they're going too far. Which is a very sort of like.
How
you can
dare
say that
this
about any
minority
cause.
group do anything?
Any cause can go too far. But yeah, those are going to be examples where it's clear, like, it can get us into the author's politics in a weird way, or in a they're not very good at conveying things kind of way.
Yeah, I agree. If anything, I would oftentimes say, especially when it comes to the trope of like oh, this group has gone too far, I would go as far to say that usually means that person is against whatever movement is similar to that in real life. But that's just my personal interpretation and understanding of politics. Yeah. Do you think a meaning of the text is inherent within the text itself, or it's created within the relationship between the text and the reader? This is another one where I'm gonna say it's both. I think it... Because... How do I put this? Yeah, I do think it's both. I think, generally speaking, words have definitions, and then there's these what is strictly said, and then there's also what you interpreted from it, right? Purpose and meanings are not synonyms. A text's purpose will not be the same as the meaning it has for everyone. That's a really good line. Thank you, Ahmed Arjakos. For some reason, I'm saying your full name. Okay. So, the final thing. The most important thing about media to Princess Hope's analysis framework is how did the work make you feel? What emotions have you felt during your time engaging with it? Did it lead you to understand something about yourself or the world around you? I'll be fixing some things. Don't worry. How to evaluate feelings? Well, pretty simple. How did it make you feel? How strongly did it make you feel? If you're in touch with your emotions, you'll know. And sometimes media analysis can get you more in touch with your emotions. That's how I got in touch with my emotions as I am. It's through media analysis. And that's the end of the class. Did everyone enjoy? They want to have fun.
Yes.
Yay!
Yep.
I'm glad you had
Indeed.
fun.